April 7, 1945. Just after dawn, 91 P-51D Mustangs of the 15th and 21st Fighter Groups broke across the coast of Honshu after a 750-mile flight from Iwo Jima, an achievement Japanese commanders had confidently dismissed as impossible. For the pilots rushing to get airborne around Tokyo, the sight was almost surreal. American single-engine fighters appearing over the Imperial capital itself. Mount Fuji rose sharply in the clear morning light as the Mustangs released their silver auxiliary tanks and climbed toward more than 100 circling B-29s, preparing for their bombing run. Japanese defenders expected the bombers. What they did not expect were escort fighters with the range to cross the open ocean, meet the formation, fight, and still make it back to Iwo Jima. Pilots flying Ki-84s, Ki-43s, Ki-44s, Ki-61s, and Naval Zero variants suddenly faced an enemy they had been assured could never reach them. Many hesitated at the first merge, stunned by how fast and how decisively the Mustangs moved through the sky. Flight Sergeant Totanimizu would later recall thinking he was hallucinating when he first saw the Mustangs over Tokyo, an encounter that shattered any remaining belief that Japan's home airspace could still be defended. The impact was immediate and deeply psychological. The arrival of the Mustangs made one reality unmistakable. Distance was no longer Japan's protection. For many Japanese pilots, that morning marked the moment they realized the war had turned into something they could no longer hope to control. The P-51D Mustang embodied the most efficient combination of American aerodynamics and British engine technology. Its Packard-built Merlin V1650-7, with a two-stage, two-speed supercharger, delivered nearly full power above 25,000 feet, altitudes where Japanese radial engines rapidly lost output. The Mustang cruised efficiently, climbed cleanly, and reached about 440 miles per hour at altitude, with enough range for missions exceeding 1,500 miles using twin 110-gallon drop tanks. Its laminar flow wing, designed to minimize drag across a wide portion of the airfoil, allowed the Mustang to dive safely past 450 to 500 miles per hour without losing control authority. 650 caliber M2 Browning machine guns, firing 80 rounds per second with nearly 1,900 rounds, total rounds aboard, provided sustained and highly reliable firepower with consistent ballistics. Japan's Ki-84 Hayate, on paper, looked competitive. Its HA-45 engine produced strong power at low altitude, and its combination of 20mm and 30mm cannons made it a dangerous gun platform if everything worked perfectly. But that was increasingly rare after 1944. Production quality collapsed under shortages of steel, aluminum, machining tools, and trained labor. Engines overheated or seized, landing gear folded unexpectedly, and high-octane fuel became so scarce that squadrons operated with 80 to 87 octane substitutes that crippled performance. Even brand-new Ki-84s varied wildly between airframes. One might reach 400 miles per hour, another struggled past 350. Ammunition capacity was a fraction of the Mustangs, forcing Japanese pilots to fire only at point-blank range. Radios, oxygen gear, and instruments frequently failed. Reliability became Japan's fatal weakness. Combat aircraft could not be trusted to fight, climb, or even land safely. The result was a widening gap in real-world capability. As the Mustang improved with each production run, the Ki-84 degraded with every month of material scarcity. By early 1945, the aircraft were no longer equals in practice. The technology divide ensured that any large-scale confrontation would tilt heavily toward the Americans. American pilots arriving at Iwo Jima in 1945 typically had 400 to 600 hours of flight time, including extensive training in formation flying, instrument navigation, deflection shooting, and high-altitude combat. Many had spent years refining tactics developed over Europe, dive and zoom attacks, energy management, and coordinated multi-ship engagements. Their 50 caliber guns, ammunition, and convergence settings were standardized, giving pilots confidence in how their weapons performed at range. Japanese pilots faced the opposite reality. By 1945, most of the wartime veterans who once challenged American air power had been lost in the Solomons, New Guinea, the Marianas, and the Philippines. Their replacements often received only 30 to 50 hours of total flight time and virtually no live-fire gunnery training due to severe ammunition shortages. Many had never fired their weapons at a moving target before their first combat mission. This lack of training showed immediately over Tokyo. Japanese fighters arrived low on fuel, struggled to coordinate attacks, and often broke formation the moment American fighters entered the merge. Mustang pilots used a consistent playbook: approach with altitude advantage, make a high-speed firing pass, and climb away before Japanese fighters could respond. The Ki-84's theoretical maneuverability meant little when engines misfired, oxygen systems failed at altitude, and pilots lacked the training to match P-51 pilots in vertical maneuvering. Kill ratios reflected the widening gap. On the first April 7th mission, the Mustangs claimed 26 victories for the loss of 2 aircraft, a 13-to-1 ratio. In the following weeks, as Japanese pilot quality declined further, kill ratios of 20-to-1 or even 30-to-1 became common. The Mustang's speed, firepower, and durability combined with superior pilot training to produce consistent results in every engagement. The defining factor behind American dominance was not a single aircraft. It was the industrial and logistical system that supported it. North American aviation produced P-51Ds at a rate of nearly 1 per hour, with over 15,000 Mustangs built by war's end. Every aircraft rolled off the line with interchangeable parts, standardized tools, and predictable performance. Ground crews could change an engine in 4 hours, repair battle damage overnight, and keep operational readiness above 80% despite the harsh conditions on Iwo Jima. Japan could not match any part of this system. Only 3,514 Ki-84s were produced, and far fewer were ever combat-ready. Factories hit by B-29 raids relied on improvised materials, inconsistent heat treatment, and untrained labor. Aircraft often left the factory already compromised. Spare parts were nearly non-existent, forcing squadrons to cannibalize one aircraft to keep another flying. Fuel shortages were catastrophic. American fighters operated exclusively on 100 octane aviation, gasoline, shipped across the Pacific in an unbroken supply chain, supported by Liberty ships, tankers, and long-range transports. Japanese squadrons, by contrast, operated with fuel sometimes rated at 80 to 87 octane, and in extreme cases blended with pine root oil or alcohol. Engines designed for high-grade fuel detonated, overheated, or lost power at altitude. Many fighters were grounded permanently, not for combat damage, but simply because there was no usable fuel. Behind every Mustang mission stood a network of weather reconnaissance aircraft, radar stations, submarine lifeguard groups, spare part pipelines, and medical rescue operations. Japanese pilots flew without meaningful support, often without radios, and with no chance of rescue if they ditched at sea. For them, every mission began with the knowledge that a mechanical failure or fuel-short landing was as deadly as an American bullet. As Japan's industrial system collapsed and its fuel reserves dwindled, the number of operational fighters shrank from hundreds to mere dozens. By mid-1945, the skies over the home islands were held up by a logistical miracle on one side and barely by hope on the other. The first large-scale engagement on April 7th set the tone for every mission that followed. The Mustangs merged with a mixed force of Ki-43s, Ki-44s, Ki-61s, and naval fighters near Tokyo, using altitude, speed, and coordinated formations to control the fight. American pilots hit from above, made brief firing passes, and climbed back into the sun before Japanese fighters could organize a counterattack. In the months that followed, P-51s from Iwo Jima flew deep into the Japanese homeland almost daily. They escorted B-29s during daylight bombing, strafed airfields, destroyed grounded aircraft, and swept the skies ahead of the bombers. Each mission consumed thousands of gallons of high-octane fuel and demanded 8 hours or more in the cockpit, pushing both pilots and machines to their limits. Weather was sometimes more dangerous than enemy fighters. On June 1st, later called Black Friday, approximately 150 Mustangs en route to Osaka flew directly into a massive, unforecasted storm front. Turbulence, icing, and zero visibility tore formations apart. 27 P-51s were lost, most to weather rather than combat. The incident revealed that even the best-equipped pilots could be undone by the Pacific's unpredictable skies. By July and August, Japanese fighter opposition had thinned dramatically. Many units were grounded permanently for lack of fuel. Others flew only a handful of aging aircraft, staffed by teenage pilots who had received almost no training. Mustang pilots still treated each mission seriously. Anti-aircraft fire remained deadly, but encounters with organized fighter resistance became increasingly rare. On August 10th, the Mustangs scored 7 more aerial victories in one of the war's final dogfights. Days later, as Japan prepared to surrender, P-51s continued flying pre-planned missions. Communication failures meant some pilots fought on even as the war was ending. The last American combat death of the conflict occurred during one of these flights, when Second Lieutenant Philip Schlamberg was shot down near Nagoya on August 14th. Across all missions from Iwo Jima, the Mustangs were credited with more than 200 Japanese aircraft destroyed, a figure that likely underrepresents actual losses, as many crash sites were never found. Air superiority in the home islands had shifted decisively and irreversibly. As Mustang operations intensified, Japanese morale deteriorated rapidly. Pilots wrote openly in diaries that the appearance of American fighters over Tokyo broke their final illusions about defending the homeland. Many recognized that if enemy fighters could reach the Imperial Palace in broad daylight, Japan no longer had meaningful air power. Material shortages accelerated the collapse. Fuel reserves dwindled to the point that entire fighter groups were grounded. Even elite units disintegrated as aircraft were lost to mechanical failures, crashes, and lack of maintenance. Some squadrons went from dozens of pilots to only a few survivors in a matter of months. Others reformed with new recruits, only to be wiped out again. Meanwhile, the Mustangs symbolized the scale and precision of American industry. Hundreds survived the war and still fly today, maintained by the same production standards that made them reliable in combat. In contrast, only one surviving Ki-84 remains in Japan, a lone artifact of a fighter that never reached its full potential. By late summer, the strategic consequences were unmistakable. B-29s bombed Japan in daylight without escort, not because fighters were unavailable, but because none were needed. Japanese air defenses had ceased to exist as an organized force. The industrial centers that powered the empire had been burned out, and the few remaining fighters could do nothing to stop it. The arrival of the P-51D Mustang over Tokyo marked the moment Japan understood that distance, geography, and the divine wind no longer offered protection. Modern war was decided by production lines, fuel supplies, and technology, areas where the United States held overwhelming advantage. The age of industrial air power had arrived, and Japan was on the wrong side of its mathematics.